Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today we are going to completely break down the way you look at the sky and maybe the way you look at society itself. We usually think of religion as, a matter of personal faith.
Right. It's about theology. It's about what you believe in.
Exactly. But what if we looked at it purely as a social machine? What if God wasn't the starting point, but a concept we built piece by piece just to hold our civilizations together?
It's a radical shift in perspective, really.
It is. Today, we're tracing the evolution of the divine, from these weird, invisible energy fields all the way to the one God. And finally, we're going to get to the shocking idea that atheism itself, well, it might just be another kind of religion.
Instead of asking, does God exist, the question becomes, why did we invent the specific version of God that we did?
Yes. We're diving into a classic text, Dini Sociology, or Religious Sociology, written way back in 1943 by the Turkish scholar Hilmi Ziya Ülken. And let me tell you, this book does not pull any punches.
No, it really doesn't. His core thesis is that the idea of God is basically a mirror.
A mirror for human society. So when we were in tribes, our gods were tribal. When we built empires,
Our God became an emperor. He's performing a sociological dissection. He just strips away all the theology and the mysticism to look at the pure mechanics of belief.
it's a fascinating journey. So let's go right back.
Yeah.
Ground zero, the dawn of humanity. I think most people assume, early humans were simple. They looked at the sun, got scared, and boom, a sun god.
Yeah, or they thought a giant lived in the volcano or something.
Right, but Vulcan says that's just wrong.
It's completely wrong. According to the data he presents, he points to the Arunta people of Australia as, like, a prime example of a primitive society. And at that stage, there is no God in the modern sense. No guy with a beard in the clouds.
Not even a sun god with a personality.
Not yet.
Okay, so if they aren't praying to a god, what is going on inside their heads? I mean, is the universe just empty to them?
Far from it. The world of primitive man is incredibly crowded. But it's not crowded with personalities.
Okay.
It's crowded with forces. Olkin calls this stage totemism.
And that's not just dancing around a wooden pole, right?
No, it's way more abstract. It's about a fundamental split in reality between two zones. The sacred, or Mukaddis, and the profane Lamakaddis.
All right, let's break that down. Sacred and profane. I think we usually think sacred means holy or good.
And that's a crucial distinction because that's not what he means here at all. In this primitive stage, sacred doesn't mean morally good. It means charged.
Charged, like...
Think of a high-voltage wire. Is electricity good? No. It's powerful. It's dangerous. If you touch it without the right protection, it kills you.
I see.
That's the core of primitive religion. It's about managing this invisible, impersonal energy.
The text uses terms like mana from Melanesia or Orenda and Manitou from North American tribes. Yeah. I have to admit, when I hear mana, I just think of video games.
That's actually a surprisingly accurate analogy for this concept.
Really? Like, I'm out of mana, I can't cast a spell.
Exactly. In a game, mana is a resource, a fluid. You can have more or less of it. For these societies, mana is exactly that, a diffuse life force. It's in people, animals, objects.
So if a warrior is strong...
It's not because a god likes him, it's because he physically has more mana.
So it's like a quantifiable stat. That guy has level 99 mana.
Pretty much. And if a river floods, it's the mana of the water acting up. So religion, at its root, is a kind of technology, a system of taboos and rituals to handle this radioactive material of the soul.
You don't pray to mana?
You possess it or you avoid it. It's all mechanics, not a relationship.
That is wild.
What?
It just removes the personality from religion entirely. The universe is alive, but it doesn't have a face.
Not yet. The God idea hasn't been born because society isn't complex enough to need a personality to run things.
So how do we get a face? How do we go from may the force be with you to, Zeus or Jupiter? That seems like a massive psychological jump.
It is. And before we make that jump to the personality phase, it's important to note this transition usually happens when the human group starts to settle down.
Right. And speaking of settling down, before we move on to how gods got their personalities, I do want to take a quick second to say, if you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button. It really helps us keep these deep dives coming.
So, moving from mana to God, the text identifies the next stage as animism. Basically, that big pool of impersonal energy starts to break apart. It separates into distinct souls and spirits.
And this is where you get ancestor worship.
Exactly.
So this is where dead grandpa isn't just gone. He's actually sticking around to make sure you follow the rules.
In a sense, yeah. Ulkin mentions zealotry worshipping animals and the belief that ancestors control nature. But then, as humanity interacts more with the environment, we get naturism. The forces of nature themselves get personalized.
The sun isn't just hot man anymore.
It becomes a sun spirit. The storm becomes a storm spirit.
Okay, but a spirit isn't quite a god yet, is it? I mean, spirits are usually local. They haunt a specific tree or a specific valley.
Correct. And this is where the sociology really kicks in. This is the part of the book I found most compelling.
Oh, yeah.
As human society gets more complex, our gods have to get a promotion just to keep up. When humans stop wandering and build a site or a city, the gods settle down too. They organize into families.
Oh, I see. Like the Greek pantheon, Zeus, Hera, Ares, all the drama on Mount Olympus.
Exactly. Have you ever stopped to wonder why Mount Olympus looks like a dysfunctional royal family?
I just assumed the Greeks liked drama.
Well, yes, but it's because Athens was a dysfunctional political family. Ulkin's point is, because there's a hierarchy in the city, there has to be a hierarchy in the heavens.
As human society becomes a city, the gods become citizens.
Yes. They get distinct personalities, specific jobs, family trees. They are a direct mirror of the social structure on Earth.
That makes so much sense. If you have a blacksmith in town, you need a blacksmith god like Hephaestus. If you have a king,
You need a king of the gods. Precisely. The theology follows the sociology. But then society changes again. We move from the city-state to the empire.
Rome, the great Islamic empire.
Exactly. And when you have these vast empires conquering diverse tribes, polytheism becomes, well, inefficient.
Inefficient how? Too many managers.
In a way, yes. Imagine you're the Roman emperor. You've conquered 20 different nations. They all have their own local gods, their own laws. How do you unite them? You can't just keep adding gods to the list. It's a bureaucratic mess. You need a unifying principle.
So the political need for one law creates the theological need for one god.
It certainly paves the way. First, you get henotheism, where there are many gods, but one is the big boss, like Brahma in Hinduism. But the ultimate evolution for Ulkin is true monotheism.
The one god, Rabbul Alamin, the Lord of the Worlds.
And notice the shift here. In polytheism, the gods are usually craftsmen, demiurgos. They take existing matter and shape it.
Zeus didn't create the universe, he just rules it.
Right. But in true monotheism, God creates ex nihilo.
From nothing. Why is that distinction so important?
Yeah.
Creating from nothing versus just organizing.
Because it reflects the absolute power of the new social structure. When all these diverse tribes melt into a single humanity under an empire, their local nature gods melt into a single, universal, abstract creator.
The sociological link is undeniable.
You can't really have a universal religion until you have the concept of a universal humanity.
So the empire creates the conditions for the one god. That is, well, it takes a little of the magic out of it, doesn't it? It makes it feel inevitable.
It grounds it in reality. But here is where Ulkin throws a curveball that really surprised me. And this is the part I really want to dig into.
Good.
We usually think the timeline goes animism, polytheism, monotheism, and then science, secularism.
Right. People stop believing. We get physics, and God retires.
But Ulkin identifies a stage he calls his tanurjulik.
Which translates to atheism.
Literally no godism. But
Yeah.
here's the twist. He classifies this as a religion. He calls it religious atheism.
Wait, hang on. How can you be an atheist and be religious? Isn't the definition of atheism that you don't have a religion?
It sounds like a contradiction.
Yeah, it sounds like saying I'm a vegetarian who eats steak.
Not in this sociological framework. He points to Buddhism, Lamaism, and Jainism. Think about it. Early Buddhism doesn't focus on a creator god. The Buddha isn't a deity in the Western sense.
He's an enlightened teacher.
Exactly. The focus isn't on worshiping a personality, it's on a metaphysical concept.
The concept of nirvana.
Yes, or nihil nothingness. The goal is to break the cycle of reincarnation. Ulkin argues this is a religion without a god. It has rituals, a concept of salvation, monks, temples, holy texts. It functions just like a theistic religion socially.
But the center isn't a divine person.
No, it's a divine state of being or non-being.
That is a really cool distinction. So he's separating philosophical atheism, like I only believe in atoms, from religious atheism, which is I believe in a spiritual path, but there's no guy running the show.
That's it exactly. It challenges our very Western definition of religion. We're so used to thinking religion equals God. Ulkin says religion equals a system of sacred and profane, and you can have that system without a deity. You can have a church of nothingness.
So basically you can take God out of the equation, but you can't take the religion out of the human, We still organize ourselves around something.
Precisely. And that brings us to the next big part of the text, where he applies this lens to Christianity and Islam.
Right.
And I found his analysis of Jesus really interesting because it touches on something that was pretty controversial back then.
Yeah, he talks about the pathological theories, right?
He does. He discusses the historical analysis, the debates, was he a myth, was he real? But he specifically addresses these 19th century theories that try to explain Jesus's visions or his claim to be the Son of God as megalomania or paranoia.
The idea that the prophets were just hallucinating.
Right. But Olkin pushes back hard against this. He says you can't reduce a massive social movement to the mental state of one person.
That makes sense.
If a guy stands on a corner in New York shouting he's the Son of God, nobody cares. He doesn't start a civilization.
So even if he was hearing voices, that doesn't explain why millions of people followed him.
Exactly. High-intensity religious conviction isn't madness in a sociological sense. It's a social phenomenon. It only works if it resonates with the social needs of the time.
And for Christianity, that was.
The text points out that it did something radical. It separated religion from the state. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Which allowed it to become universal. It could survive anywhere because it didn't try to be the government.
At least not initially. But yes, it moved from a Jewish sect tied to a specific nation and land to a universal faith by breaking that link between nation and God.
And then we have Islam. Olkin presents Islam as a kind of synthesis.
That's the argument. He sees it as combining the universalism of Christianity, the idea that God is for everyone, with the rigorous legal structure of Judaism.
Well, Sharia.
Yes. Judaism is a religion of law. Christianity, a religion of faith and spirit. Islam, according to the text, synthesizes these by creating a universal community, the Ummah, governed by divine law.
And the concept of God in Islam fits this synthesis model, too.
It fits the sociological need for unity perfectly. Allah in Islam is described as the ultimate abstraction. No image, no incarnation, you can't draw him, he has no son, he is absolute.
And the word Islam itself means submission.
Total surrender to this absolute abstract power. Sociologically, it was a perfect fit for the environment.
Arabia at the time.
Yes, the text mentions the Hanif movement, people who were already looking for a single god before Islam arrived. The tribes were fragmented, constantly fighting. Society was being destroyed by blood feuds. The social pressure was building for a unifying force.
And a single absolute God was the only concept strong enough.
Strong enough to melt those tribal identities into one civilization.
It's just amazing how looking at the social conditions makes the theology make so much sense. It's not random, it's a solution to a problem.
Religion always solves a social problem, even the problem of good and evil.
Which brings us to dualism. The text talks about religions with two gods.
Yes, dualism. Think of Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda versus Ahriman, light versus dark. Two creative forces warring over the universe.
It's a very dramatic way to see the world. But Olkin brings up a psychological point here that I loved. He talks about the ambivalence of the divine.
This is so crucial. We tend to think God is good and the devil is bad. Simple.
Black and white.
But Olton argues that in the earliest religious experiences, the sacred is both. It is terrifying and attractive.
He uses the terms Jalal and Jamal.
Exactly. Jalal is the majesty, the wrath, the power that makes you tremble. It's the hurricane. Jamal is the beauty, the mercy, the love. The God idea always contains this double value.
You run towards it, but you're also afraid it might burn you.
It's like fire. It cooks your food, but it can burn your house down.
And this ambivalence is where the devil comes from.
It evolves into that concept, yes. In many myths, the demon isn't purely evil. Olkin brings up the trickster figure like the raven in Native American myths or Prometheus in Greek mythology.
Prometheus, the guy who stole fire from the gods for humans.
Yes. He's a rebel against the high god, but he's a friend to humanity. In some Gnostic traditions, the demon represents life, desire, civilization, technology. The high god represents order, law, asceticism.
That is a wild flip. The devil as the bringer of civilization.
It makes sense if you view religion as social control. The high god wants order and stability. The rebel wants progress, change, and knowledge. Society needs both, so our myths create figures for both.
I think that's a perspective we miss a lot today. We like our villains to be purely bad.
But historically, the rebel is often just the agent of change, and that brings us full circle.
So let's zoom out. We've gone from manna, this raw electricity, to nature spirits, to the bickering families of city gods, to the absolute monarch of monotheism, and even to this religious void of atheism.
It's a long journey. And the key takeaway from Ilkin's Dini sociology is that None of this is accidental.
Right. It's not that people just randomly change their minds about what God looked like.
No, God concepts aren't static, they're mirrors. As human social structures evolve, from the clan to the tribe to the city to the empire, the idea of God expands to fill that container. We organize the heavens to match how we organize ourselves.
It really makes you look at your own beliefs differently. You realize you're part of this huge historical process. You're not just an individual believer, you're a data point in a sociological system.
And that process hasn't stopped. That's the most important thing. We are not at the end of religion, we're just in the current phase.
And that leads me to a question I want to leave everyone with today. We talked about atheism as religion, systems like Buddhism that have structure but no God.
Yes.
Well, look at the modern world. Traditional theism belief in the old-school creator God is declining in many places. But are we actually becoming less religious? Or are we just evolving into that religious atheism phase Olkin talked about?
That is the ultimate sociological question, isn't it?
Are we building a new kind of godless religion right now? We have our own taboos, things you can't say. We have our own sacred values. We have our own concepts of salvation through technology or politics. We might just be building the church of the 21st century without even realizing it.
If society is the machine that builds the God, then our modern machine is definitely building something. It just might not look like anything we've seen before.
Something to chew on. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into religious sociology. Keep thinking deeper.